Today I'm balancing the injector butterflies on the 750. As you can see, I've already raised the tank. For those of you who are new at it, the two bolts on the front go into these tabs, and then it actually hinges on the back bolt, so you can just flip it up and put some sort of a block under it to hold it up in place. Once you do that, you can get in at all the goodies underneath, your injectors, your butterflies, your cables, electronics. Makes the job a lot easier, especially in a case like this where you have to run the engine. You don't have to worry about trying to hang a tank up somewhere. It'll run with the tank right in place. So what we're going to do is, and it's hard to see, but right there is a nipple. Just pull that cap off and you can hook up your vacuum lines. Now for this case, I have the vacuum carb synchronizer. Each one has an individual valve which will be adjusted to get the needles all in the same place to start with. Then we can have a look at whether they're all sucking the same amount of vacuum or not. So I am going to turn this off for a moment and get the tools, and I'll hook the first one up so you can basically see it. From then on, it's the same for each one. So all you really need is a pair of needle nose pliers. Usually these things aren't overly tight, but it's too hard to get your fingers and everything in there. Okay, even with the pliers it's stubborn. There we go. Just take that rubber cap off. We now have an open brass nipple there. So pretty obvious, we're just going to slide our hose on. There we go. Just like that, and that's the first one hooked up. Not going to go through it for all four. I think it's pretty obvious what you need to do. Find each cap, pull it off, hook the next hose on the hose on the next gauge, and keep them, of course, in line. You want the first gauge to the first butterfly, second gauge the second. That way you're not getting confused on which one you're adjusting. So flip it off again. I'm going to hook the other three up, and then we'll have a look at how to set the gauges up. So I finally got all the hoses hooked up. There was an issue with the last one. It actually isn't a cap over the nipple. It has a vacuum line hooked up to it. And of course it broke, and it took me about 30 minutes to get the little piece off of the nipple. So now what we're going to do is going to make sure all the gauges are set to the same starting point. Now if you have these, take the cap off. There's a small screw right here. That screw adjusts the needle. So as you turn it, the needle moves actually in the opposite direction to what you turn the screw. So I normally set them to the middle of the square. So here's the next one. I turn it back past and then bring it up until it's where I want it. So I'll do that with the other two, and then I'll come back. So now we have her warmed up. Everything's hooked up. As you can see, the gauges are all sitting at 0. That's because I have the valves turned on. So Now we start feeding vacuum into the gauges. Now you see, bring it up till you get that nice big wobble. And then slowly turn the valve in to narrow the wobble down. You want to have just a slight wobble. That means you're getting your full vacuum and you'll have some response when you make any adjustments. And do the same to the next one. Now we have the big wobble. Now slowly bring her down and try to have about the same amount of wobble as the other gauge. Now we'll do that to the last two. There we are. It doesn't have to be dead on as long as it's close. And then the last one. So as you can see, now the actual numbers don't matter. These are automotive vacuum gauges that they use. So all the writing on them is basically for fuel pumps and engines on cars. What we're looking at is not the number, just the position. We're looking to have all of them in the same position or very close. As you can see, that one's at about 10. This one over here is around 8.5. This one's at 7. And this one's at 7. So we either want to bring the two 7s up and the 8.5 up to the 10, or bring the 10 and the 8.5 down to 7. So now just get the tools and we'll do the adjustment on the butterflies. Now in order to make the adjustments on the butterflies, you need to remove the airbox. Airbox is actually quite simple on one of these. There's a single bolt, 10 millimeter. Here at the top. There is a connector here, big hose, another big hose back here. Then on each of the throttle bodies you're going to find one of these clamps. Loosen all 4 clamps off. Then we can come around to this side. There is a small vacuum line there and this electrical plug. Once that is done, you can just wiggle the box up easily. Lift it straight up and out she comes. Easy as pie. Now you have full access to your throttle bodies. Your adjustment screw is right down in there between each of the throttle bodies. There's your third one back here. So you have 1, 2, 3 throttle body adjustment screws, and then your fourth one is your actual idle adjustment screw. So normally what I would do, as long as it keeps your idle within reason, is leave this one alone because that sets your idle, and simply balance the other three to this one. Okay, so here we are all set up. I usually leave the air cleaner sitting on something beside the bike because I like having that little hose and electrical hooked up. It tends to run a little bit better just while we're doing the adjustment. Unfortunately, I screwed up one of my valves, so I'm just going to have to take the third valve and move it over when I'm ready to adjust this one. So as I said, we're up at, whoops, as I said, we're up at 10, 10 and a half on that first one. So what we want to do is to try to bring this second one up to the same level. Now it's a Phillips screw. Now, as you can see, we have the first two pretty much even. They're both bouncing around 9 there now. Which actually brings our third one pretty much into line with it. I'm going to give it just a touch. Those three are lined up perfectly. Now let's see how number 4 does once we switch the valves over. So as you can see, it's actually come in even with the other ones. So number 3 is bouncing around wildly because I don't have my adjustment valve to take the bounce out of it. We already looked at it and it was right on. You can hear the bike is already running smoother. So now we put her back together and we'll check the throttle position sensor, make sure it's adjusted properly.